part 3. So I run out of paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix more of my sand color. So the sand, I'm using my white. I'm using a bit of magenta, a bit of yellow, which is cadmium yellow. And I'm using my quinacridone burnt orange. See if I can mix the same color. So what I do for that is I mix it and then I take my brush and go up and sort of see. It's pretty close. And I kind of like the streaks that I'm getting where it's not all the same color, so I'm going to just leave that for now. I think it looks interesting. The sand in this picture has a bunch of footprints in it. And I'm not going to in my other painting I put them in, but I think I'm going to just leave it as smooth sand with shadows. Because I kind of want this to look like a beach that no one's been to. So when I bring my paint in here, I'm leaving a little bit of that red line between where the trunk is and where the sand is. And I might narrow it as I layer up on the sand later. But for right now, I'm just going to kind of go up right close to it. Now I know that my sand has some shadows in it that are right behind this stick. And this shadow color is also going to need to be redone. But just for now, I'm going to put in kind of where that is. There's also a shadow here. Okay, and I'm going to do that darker in a moment. Okay, so I'm really trying to get as much of this sand color off of my tray. I definitely do this all the time where I don't mix enough, but I don't know, it's how I paint. I guess I like to struggle or something, I don't know. But I find that I'm always doing this and not having enough and then having to remix the color. I think the only benefit to it is by having to mix a color many times, you learn how to do it. So it makes you better at mixing colors and remembering how to do it. But it can be frustrating too, and I don't recommend it when you're trying to finish something and you just can't quite get it right. Okay, so for a first layer of sand, I think that looks kind of good. All right, so now I'm going to try to do this lighter value in this the wave. So for that, I'm going to use white. I'm going to use a little bit of blue. But it's going to be mostly white and a bit of yellow. Okay. And I think for my my glue that I'm going to use, there's a bit of a turquoise to this water because it's Hawaii, and so I find that the phthalo blue gives a really nice turquoise color. So even though I already have a lot of ultramarine blue on my palette, I'm going to get out a bit of my phthalo, and I'm going to just use a small amount. Phthalo blue is very, very pigmented, so it doesn't take a lot. And before you know it, you have a very, very turquoise blue color. It doesn't, so a little goes a long way with that one. So I can already tell that this color I've mixed isn't quite right. I think it has too much blue in it. Anyway, I'm going to see how it looks. So, this is sort of here. No, it's actually not bad. It's a little bit too green, but I can fix that after. So the reason it's too green is it has a little bit too much phthalo blue in it. So that's okay though. So when you're doing waves like this is wet, this is wet. So I've done one rim of the wave, and I'm going to just take my brush and do the the second one. I'm going to leave a little gap there on purpose. So I guess the way that I paint is it's almost like you create a drawing and then it becomes like almost a fill in the sections. So you're going to start by filling in with different colors that you've made. And then once you've got kind of your background layer for everything, then you're going to build on top of that with detail. And I think if you approach painting that way, it's a lot less overwhelming. One of the ways I was taught to paint, and this isn't wrong, but it requires a lot more organization, is that you start from the back and work your way forward. And I think a lot of people do that, so they would paint the sky and then they would layer on top of that. Okay, next might be the water, and then they would do the rock, and then they would do the tree last. And definitely you could, I've done it that way and it can be done that way. I think though that the end product, where you're kind of going back and forth and doing things, it looks nicer when you do it this way. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. I can see that this color is similar to what's in some of my water back here, although it's a little bit more blue. And because I already have that color mixed, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I find that my paint is quite dry, so I'm going to add more of my flow release. And I just added a little more phthalo blue to that mix that I used there for the wave. I'm going to just start putting this in. Now this color, I can tell right away, is already too turquoise, but that's okay. I really like turquoise, so I might leave it. The water line is here, I think. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this color in, full well knowing that I'm going to need to change it a bit. But with water, like with a lot of things in acrylic painting, the way that you make it look real is by painting many layers. So I'm putting on the background color, and then I'm going to come in with darker and lighter values, and I'm going to layer those on top in kind of wave shapes in order to make my water look real. So I know that the value of the blue over here is a bit more of a dark value, so I'm going to leave most of this like that. And I'm just going to try to get the sparkling blue water in on this side. The other thing I think I should quickly talk about is light source in paintings. So this painting, the light or the sunset is over here. And it's actually quite low to the ocean. So the light is actually bouncing off the water under the tree, and that's why we're getting our light here and here, and we've got the darkness there. I think it's important to keep that in mind when you're painting. Where is the light source coming from? It'll help you to figure out where you should put your highlights and where you should put your low lights. So I'm kind of fighting it a little bit with this brush. It's a really big brush, but because it's not very precise, it's forcing me to be a bit loose with how I do this. And the edges are very soft, so I as much as I find that a bit tricky, I like it. Okay. So, alright. So we're getting somewhere. Okay, so if I stand back and look at it, first of all, this water line isn't straight. I know I need to fix that. I have something that I use. Just a piece of plastic that I actually don't remember where I got this. I think it was like, it came in some packaging that I had. It's acrylic plastic. And what I do is I use it to kind of measure. And then if I'm making a straight line across a painting, it allows me to mark that and then make sure that I'm I'm keeping it kind of the same all the way across. So I see right there I'm too high. So what you can do as well is you can take this and kind of mark into your paint. But it's a bit tricky because this canvas I think is a little bit crooked right now. It's so big. Probably I should have put a level on the top of it, but inevitably it's going to move around. Okay, so the last big piece to do is the sky. So I think what I'm going to do is mix the sky. And notice with the sky here, the value is a very light, almost like a powder blue. And as you move from the top to the bottom, it becomes yellow and then almost a pink. So at the horizon line, I'm gonna leave that kind of pink. And at the top, which is essentially the underpainting, then I'm gonna have a yellowy layer, a greenish layer, and then I'm gonna have a blue layer. And my yellow layer is gonna be similar to the color that I did on the wave. Because you can see here, that color is actually similar to that color. And I'm probably going to have to put, actually I think I'm going to add a bit of water to this. I'd like to thin it out. So it's more transparent. And I'm going to just kind of wash this across like this. And it's gonna start looking kind of weird in that I'm doing this in different colors and it's gonna look like kind of a rainbow. And you're gonna think, what is she doing? But there's a method to my madness. So I'm gonna take the color that I just made there and I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of ultramarine into it, which gives me a slight greenish tint. That's actually perfect. So skies can be in areas a shade of green, which until I started looking for that in photos and in real life, I never really noticed it. But it is true that your sky is not blue the whole way across. Okay. So the very top layer of the sky is going to be kind of a powder blue. I might have already mixed this a little bit too blue, but anyway, I can add more white to it after. Actually, it's okay. Okay. So I'm going to try to do this sort of quickly while my other layer is drying. I'm going to put this in and I'm going to try to leave some of the pink around my branches because I want that underpainting to kind of still show through. Quite a lot of this background is going to get covered by branches and leaves, so I'm not really worried too much about it at this point. So the color that I left here is just the sky, and I think for that I'm going to use just plain white with a little bit of my quinacridone crimson in it. And I've got some here. Okay, so this is a nice color, but it's too pink. So when I said rainbow before, if you look down, blue, green, yellow, and pink, kind of is a rainbow. Okay, so this is definitely not perfect, but it is a start. And because quite a lot of it's going to get covered up by my branches, I'm not going to really spend too much more time on that right now. So I think now I'm going to do a bit of this ocean part over here because that looks kind of fun and easy. So I'm just going to take a bit of my phthalo and mix it in with some of the white shades that I've got here. And I'm going to mix that with a bit of my ultramarine blue. And this is definitely a brighter color that's in the, than is in the photo. But I actually don't really mind right now. And I'm going to take it further than it needs to go, which is all the way into here. Because I'm going to have to layer the water with other colors. And I'm going to do that next. Okay. So I'm just going to start a little with my wave here. That the water in the distance looks darker in value than in the foreground. So I just put that in.